is going to speak, so maybe she can give us an update on how the officer's doing.
Regarding the Apoa contract, the city reached out to us and asked if the Cpoa or the POB had any items that they wished to negotiate as a part of the collective bargaining agreement. And so I sent that out to the board for your consideration. Our response deadline is tomorrow, so I have not actually submitted the responses because I wanted to see if there were any other suggestions from the board themselves. The way I see things, there are some items that simply need to be corrected in the collective bargaining agreement, and then there are things that we would like to negotiate. The things that need to be corrected are that the appeal process for complaints is incorrectly described. The treatment of garrity materials is now inconsistent with the ordinance and the agreement reached with the Apoa. And we no longer need a signed complaint in order to investigate, because we do investigate anonymous complaints if we have enough information. So those requirements simply need to be changed so they're consistent with ordinance and with the settlement agreement. Items that were brought to my attention for negotiation. The first, that only police officers be members of the union, that sergeants and lieutenants have their own supervisors union, because that creates an inherent conflict when you have one representative and you have the possibility of the supervisor being investigated for problems with their investigation and the actual incident itself. That's inherently a conflict. And when you read the monitor's report, it's quite apparent that there are problems with frontline supervision and investigations, especially pertaining to use of force. And one of the solutions is that the supervisors would have their own association, and officers, the Apoa would only represent police officers.
So your concern is that in the same incident with a supervisor and a supervisee, if there were conflicts, the union would be representing both of them, and that would be an inherent conflict of interest.
That's correct.
Okay.
Another issue is that the department and the collective bargaining agreement reflect the settlement agreement, and that officers only are allowed to carry department-issued weapons.
And the existing contract doesn't. What does the existing contract say?
Oh, I would have to go back and pull up the exact language, but there is are allowable backup weapons that are not issued by the department, and there is actually discussions in the policy realm that strays away from the officer's duty weapon being issued by the department.
Which is
that policy has not passed. It's been tabled quite a few times.
Right.
But there is contemplation by the department that officers would be able to carry a sidearm of their choice.
So the policy was that before, got changed, and now is going back to that? Is that correct?
There's an attempt to do that. That's correct.
An attempt to do that. Okay.
The other issue brought forth is the take-home vehicles and whether or not the department should considers the cost savings of moving to fleet vehicles. And the other is the investigation timelines. We would like to see the investigation timelines expanded from 90 days to 180 days, and we would like the review timeline expanded from 30 days to 60 days. That alleviates a lot of the problems for this board to do its review in a timely manner. So those
So
are the items
explain what the 90
that-
days is now.
Excuse me?
Explain for the people that don't know what the 90 days does now. What gets done in the 90 days and the 30 days?
Well, currently, under the collective bargaining agreement, which is reflected in the settlement agreement, an investigation must be completed in 90 days. There is a one-time extension for 30 days that can be granted, but the investigative timeline is 90 days. So once an investigation is commenced, it must be completed in 90 days. If it's not completed in 90 days, then that investigation would simply be informative. There would not be any ability to discipline an officer
Which is the really critical
that-
part.
In that scenario.
Right. So for us to make recommendations, for the department to make recommendations, and us, that if you pass that 90 days or the additional 30 days with an extension, you eliminate the opportunity for discipline, for training, recommendations, for anything. Nothing goes forward. So that is why we think that this 90 days we've seen can be problematic.
That's correct.
Okay.
And those are all of the items that I have, and if any other board members have anything?
Mr. Harness, I think after having thought about this a little bit, I like all those bullet points that you're going to bring up. But the thing is, I think, and I don't know if you're going to ask for this or not, but I think it's imperative that we are part of that negotiating team. I really think that we need to be on the team since we are held accountable for part of that.
Chair Fine, Board Member Garcia, I did ask the question. I have not received a response as yet.
To participate in that conversation?
That's correct.
Okay.
Making that exact point, because we are held to standards in the collective bargaining agreement.
Well, it's
we-
especially that 90-day thing really hamstrings us, and I think it hamstrings the department as well. I mean, if you're really looking to correct and retrain behavior that is inappropriate or misinformed or whatever, you have to be able to do it in a reasonable amount of time. And I realize we don't want it to go on forever, but 90 days is really a short turnaround for all the processes that are held to that timeline. Anybody else have anything else you'd like to add? Okay.
Question?
Okay.
I'm still stuck on this point. So is there anything we can do to help you to get a response back on that, or will you let us know? Or I think it's so important. If we're going to be held accountable, I want us at the table. So if there's anything we can do to help that process, please.
Chair Fine, Board Member Garcia, I think that a communication through your counsel could
The city council?
get in, no, through your lawyer, through
Oh, okay.
Mr. Baker.
Oh, okay, Mr. Baker.
Could go a long way in getting a definitive answer.
Okay, so to be clear, Mr. Cpob contacted Mr. Harness and asked him for input to this. What things did we think should be part of the negotiation? We weren't invited at that time to participate in that conversation, but we were asked for input. And so that is the letter that Mr. Harness is writing, and he, in his saying, yes, we're going to write to you and give you this information by whatever deadline she said, he also asked if we could be present in that conversation, in that negotiation. That's the heart of it. So we are doing step one, and we've already asked for step two. But talking to Mr. Baker is a smart move, and we will do that.
Chair Fine, we have, this is not the first time we've asked to be at the table negotiating as a part of the collective bargaining agreement. We made the same request during the last negotiation period.
Right.
So this is not, this
Were
is
we
an issue.
ignored at that time?
That's correct. We were ignored.
Have we ever not been ignored? I'm just saying. Okay, so will you contact Mr. Baker, or do you want me to, or what do you want to happen?
Chair Fine, I will send out our negotiation items and our items that are necessary to be changed, and I will include Attorney Baker in that, and then again reiterate our request that we're at the table negotiating those terms.
Okay, thank you. The traffic data update, is that the same thing I just did before? Okay, sorry. Okay.
Could I ask something?
Sure.
Before we move on? First of all, I have to apologize that I did not read the